Picture the biggest animal you have ever stood next to. Now triple it. Add tusks the length of a car. Add 4 tons of muscle moving toward you at full speed. That was Tuesday for your ancestors. No guns, no steel, no way to call for help. Just a sharpened stick and a group of people who had done this before. And somehow, again and again, they won. How does a 5-foot-tall human with a wooden spear bring down an animal built like a tank? The answer is not about strength. It is about something far stranger. Start with the obvious question. Could a single hunter actually kill a woolly mammoth alone? No. Not even close. A lone hunter with a spear against an adult mammoth was a death sentence, not a hunting strategy. Mammoths were fast, they were smart, and they traveled in herds that protected their young fiercely. A solo attack would end with the hunter as a smear in the tundra. So if brute force was never the plan, what was? The plan was psychology. Your ancestors were not the strongest predators on the Ice Age landscape. They were not the fastest either. Wolves outran them. Cave lions outmuscled them. But humans had something no other predator on the savanna or the steppe possessed, the ability to coordinate a plan across dozens of people who had never even needed to speak a shared language to understand the signal to strike. That coordination was the real weapon. The spear was just the delivery method. Anthropologist Richard Nelson, who spent decades studying subsistence hunting cultures in the Arctic, documented how modern indigenous hunters approach megafauna with a strategy built entirely on patience and terrain. You do not chase a mammoth. You let the mammoth walk into a trap it cannot see. Ancient hunters studied migration routes for years, sometimes generations, memorizing exactly where a herd would cross a river, where the ground turned soft, where a narrow gap between 2 cliffs funneled animals into a single line. The mammoth was never hunted in an open field. It was hunted on a stage the humans had already built in their minds long before the animal arrived. Here is where the real strategy begins. Archaeological sites across Europe and Siberia, including the famous mammoth bone circles found near Mezhyrich in Ukraine, reveal something remarkable. These were not just kill sites. They were settlements built almost entirely from mammoth remains, which tells researchers these animals were hunted with enough frequency and enough success that entire communities could plan their architecture around the aftermath. That level of confidence does not come from luck. It comes from a system. The system likely worked like this. Scouts would track a herd for days, watching for the weak, the young, the old, or the isolated. A mammoth separated even slightly from the group was infinitely easier to manage than one surrounded by protective adults. Once a target was identified, hunters would drive it, not with force, but with fire and noise, toward a natural trap. A ravine, a frozen lake with thin ice, a bog that looked solid, but was not. The land did the hardest work. The humans simply steered. Why does this matter so much? Because it reveals something about how your brain still operates today. You are not physically dominant compared to most threats in your environment. You never really were. What you are is a planner, a pattern reader, a creature that sees 3 steps ahead and quietly arranges the board before anyone else notices the game has started. That instinct did not disappear when mammoths did. It just changed targets. Once a mammoth was trapped, immobilized in mud or ice or a narrow gully, the actual killing was almost anticlimactic compared to the buildup. Hunters would approach cautiously, not for a single fatal blow, but for a slow, coordinated series of spear thrusts aimed at soft tissue below the ribs, avoiding the reinforced skull and the powerful trunk entirely. Paleontologist Adrian Lister, who has spent much of his career researching mammoth anatomy and Ice Age hunting evidence, has pointed to healed spear wounds found in mammoth remains as proof that many hunts were not clean, single encounters. Some mammoths survived early attempts, carrying old injuries for years before a later hunt finally succeeded. This was not a one-shot kill. It was a war of attrition, and your ancestors were playing the long game before the concept of a long game even had a name. Consider what this required emotionally, not just physically. A hunt could take days. It could fail entirely, costing the group precious energy and calories they could not afford to lose in a frozen landscape where food was never guaranteed. Yet they kept trying. Why would a species risk everything repeatedly on an animal capable of killing them in seconds? Because the reward rewired the math completely. A single successful mammoth hunt could feed a community for weeks. It provided meat, yes, but also fat, which was often more valuable than protein in cold climates because fat calories kept people alive through brutal winters that protein alone could not survive. It provided bone for tools, tusk for art and trade, and hide for shelter. One animal was not just dinner. One animal was infrastructure. It was the difference between a community that thrived through winter and one that did not see spring. This is where the psychology gets even more interesting. Researcher Pat Shipman, whose work focuses on the deep relationship between early humans and animal behavior, has argued that the domestication of wolves into early dogs may have dramatically improved hunting success for megafauna like mammoths. A pack of wolf-like companions could track scent trails for miles, corner a target, and hold it in place while human hunters closed in with spears. If this theory holds, it means your ancestors were not just individually clever. They were building alliances across species, recruiting predators that had once been competitors and turning them into teammates. That is not brute survival. That is strategy layered on strategy. Now here is the twist that makes this whole story strange rather than simply impressive. Mammoths were not stupid animals blundering into obvious traps. They were intelligent, social, deeply protective of their herd, likely capable of mourning their dead in ways researchers still debate today, which means every successful hunt was not humans overpowering a lesser mind. It was humans outthinking an equal one. The mammoth had raw power on its side. Humans had something that turned out to matter more across 100,000 years of history: the ability to imagine a future that had not happened yet and to prepare for it together. That gap, the space between what a body can do alone and what a group can plan together, is the entire story of why your species still exists. It is the same gap that let a handful of unarmed primates take down the largest land mammals to ever walk beside humans. It is not about who is strongest in the room. It is about who sees the room 3 moves ahead and gets everyone moving in the same direction before the danger even understands what is happening. You still carry this. You feel it when you plan around a problem instead of muscling through it. You feel it when a group of people, none individually powerful, moves together and accomplishes something none of them could have managed alone. That instinct was forged in the cold, on the steppe, standing beside people who trusted the plan, because the plan was the only thing standing between them and a very large, very fast, very dangerous animal. So the next time you feel small next to a problem that seems impossibly large, remember this: your ancestors stood in front of something 4 tons heavier than themselves, with nothing but sharpened wood and each other. And they won often enough to build their homes out of the proof. They did not do it with strength. They did it with each other and with a plan drawn long before the mammoth ever arrived. That 5-foot-tall human with a wooden spear was never actually facing that mammoth alone. And neither, it turns out, are you.